A bank paid 6 figures to a consulting firm to define its strategy. The deliverable said something like, customer-centered financial intermediation. Translation, we are a bank. They paid a fortune for someone to tell them what they already were. And before you laugh, open your strategic plan. There is an uncomfortable probability that it says exactly the same thing, just in your own words. That is the underlying problem. Most companies do not have a strategy. They have nice objectives, slogans, and financial projections disguised as a plan. Today, I am not going to summarize Richard Rumelt. I am going to do something more useful. First, I am going to show you how to perform an autopsy on your current plan to discover whether it is garbage. Second, I am going to give you Rumelt's kernel, which is the minimum unit of a strategy that actually works. And third, I am going to show you the multipliers that turn a correct idea into an advantage that is difficult to copy. The goal of this video is very simple, that you leave here knowing which part of your strategy is smoke, and what you would have to cancel in order to start having a real one. The most common mental trap is believing that strategy is chosen as if it were a menu option. No. Strategy is custom designed to kill a specific problem, and that is where Rumelt separates himself from the rest. 7 Powers maps the castles that already exist. Rumelt is for when you still do not have any. Blue Ocean tells you to escape competition. Rumelt assumes you are already in the mud and cannot run away. 0 to 1 is for the extraordinary case of the technological monopoly. Rumelt serves the other 99% that fights for share through operations, focus, and difficult decisions. The innovator's dilemma explains why you are going to be displaced. Rumelt forces you to answer what you are going to do about it. And thinking in systems helps you see the system. Rumelt tells you where to hit it. That is its value. It does not sell inspiration. It sells problem solving. Playbook 1. Cruel diagnosis. Before building strategy, you have to perform an autopsy. Because bad strategy is not the absence of strategy. Bad strategy has very clear symptoms. The first is fluff. Words that sound profound and say nothing. If your plan says to be customer-centered leaders, that is not a strategy. That is corporate makeup. The second symptom is not facing the real obstacle. The plan talks about growth, innovation, and culture, but it does not name the bottleneck that has you stuck. The third is confusing goals with strategy. We want to grow 20% is not strategy, it is a wish. And the fourth is having bad strategic objectives, contradictory, vague, or impossible to execute objectives. This is where the case of Chad Logan comes in. He is the kind of CEO we have all known. His great plan was something like revenue up 20%, margin up 20%, and he thought that was already a strategy. Rumelt answers him with the obvious. But almost nobody does this in a boardroom. That is not a plan to overcome an obstacle. That is what you would like to happen. Nothing more. And when a company does not want to truly choose, what happened to DEC happens. There were several factions, several priorities, several egos. The CEO pushed for an elegant consensus. The result was an empty phrase about leadership and quality. And the company died. That is Rumelt's harshest point. Bad strategy is almost always conflict avoidance disguised as consensus. So, first task. Take your current plan and cross out every phrase your competitor could also sign without changing a single comma. What survives is your real strategy. If nothing survives, you have already found the problem. Playbook 2. The kernel. Now comes the reconstruction. Rumelt says that a real strategy has 3 pieces. Not 10, not 50 slides. 3. Diagnosis. Guiding policy, coherent action. The diagnosis answers one single question. What is really happening here? Not symptoms, not aspirations, the structure of the problem. The guiding policy is the general approach you choose to confront it. And that matters because a guiding policy does not only tell you what you will do, it tells you what you will stop doing. That is the part almost nobody wants, because choosing hurts. And then comes coherent action. Not a task list, not 20 disconnected initiatives, actions that reinforce one another. The best example here is Apple in 1997. Today, everyone tells the story of Jobs as if he returned with a magical vision of the future. That was not it. Apple was close to bankruptcy, and Jobs did not come in promising spectacular growth. He did something more basic and more difficult. He diagnosed a survival problem. His guiding policy was radical simplification, and the coherent action was brutal. Cut products, cut complexity, Cut distributors, reduce noise, buy time. That was strategy. Not because it sounded grand, but because every decision reinforced the others. Fewer product lines meant more engineering focus. More focus meant less dispersion. Less dispersion meant better cash flow. And better cash flow meant time to wait for the next big opportunity. That is the kernel working. A real strategy should fit on one page. One sentence for the diagnosis, one sentence for the guiding policy, and 3 actions that reinforce one another. If you cannot write it that way, you still do not understand it. Playbook 3. Force multipliers. Now we level up. Because it is not enough to have a clean strategy. You have to design it so it multiplies force. Rumelt works with 3 especially powerful ideas here: leverage, proximate objectives, and chained systems. First, leverage. Most companies spread resources across all fronts. That is not strategy. That is entropy with a budget. Leverage consists of finding the point where a small push produces a disproportionate effect. Think of Nvidia. It did not win only because it had good chips. It won because it organized its machine around a much more uncomfortable advantage for rivals: cycle speed. It designed an operation capable of moving faster than larger, slower competitors. That is leverage, not pushing harder everywhere, hitting where it hurts the most. Second, proximate objectives. Here is one of the best ideas in the book. The leader absorbs ambiguity so the team can execute. NASA had a huge problem. They did not know exactly what the lunar surface was like. And as long as they had not resolved that, the engineers could not design well. So something crucial was done. A sufficiently concrete operating specification was defined so they could move forward. It was not the final truth of the universe. It was a useful way to reduce ambiguity. That is the leader's job, not asking for more innovation, not asking for better execution, but translating the ambiguous into something the team can actually attack today. Third, chained systems. This is where Walmart comes in. Most people looked at Walmart and saw stores. But its real operating unit was not the individual store. It was the network. Stores, distribution, information, geographic density, and replenishment, all intertwined. That changes everything. Because copying one tactic is useless. If you copy only one link, you lose. To match it, you would have to copy the entire system at once. And almost nobody can do that without breaking internally. That is where a hard-to-copy advantage lives. Not in the visible trick, but in the complete architecture. That is why the right question is not, what is my best initiative? The right question is, what system makes that initiative powerful? So, condense everything like this. First, autopsy your plan. If it is full of words anyone could sign, you do not have a strategy. Second, rebuild using the kernel. Diagnosis. Guiding policy. Coherent action. Third, design multipliers. Leverage. Proximate objectives. Chained systems. That is what separates a one-quarter advantage from a structural advantage. Good strategy looks simple in retrospect, and precisely because of that, people underestimate it. But it is rare, not because it is impossible to understand, but because it requires choosing, and choosing means saying no to things your team wants to do. Do this today. First, run the cross-out test on your current plan. Second, write your kernel on a single page. Diagnosis, policy, 3 coherent actions. Third, and this is the serious part, name one initiative you are going to cancel this week. Just one. If you cannot cancel anything, you do not have a strategy. You just watched a video and will return to the same fog. I will leave you with a question, and the answer says much more than it seems. What is the real bottleneck of your business? In one sentence? If you can write it cleanly, you are on the right track. If you need a paragraph, there is your problem. Leave it in the comments. I will respond to the ones that are well diagnosed. And if you want more books turned into executable playbooks, not summaries, subscribe. We are not here to admire ideas. We are here to use them to make better decisions.